I am back again to talk to you about trauma. And today I'm going to share with you 12 ways that I have experienced the effects of trauma, how trauma kind of stays in the body in my experience, and it can be called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Basically, what happens is if we don't discharge the energy from the traumatic event, that energy, that fearful energy, stays in your body. And the effects are really quite physical. I think this whole thing about trauma has been really misunderstood by Western medicine, by doctors, and by well-meaning people who just don't understand what the traumatized person is going through when they say that they're in a lot of distress and discomfort and pain and fear, because the event's already passed. So what I'm trying to do by sharing is to make this conversation more open, more accessible, and open this discussion so that if you or someone you know is suffering, they feel less alone, you feel less alone, and you realize that you're not crazy, and that's what's happening to you is a normal physiological response to a traumatic event. And the trauma can be many things. There are many definitions of trauma, but really it's something that's deeply uncomfortable, intolerable, and we can't cope with it, overwhelming, an experience that's overwhelming, intolerable, and often out of our control. So that could be many things. So let's get stuck into what I've boiled down to 12 points, 12 ways in which I have felt that trauma has affected me. So number one, fear. A feeling of near constant fear left in my body. Obviously, immediately after, well, no, maybe not obviously, some people might have a period of shock and denial, but for me, actually I did, after my first accident, have a period of shock and denial. After my second accident, it was straight in there, right into the feeling of fear, and the fear didn't really leave me for high level anxiety, and fear didn't leave me for many months. So this feeling of not being safe in one's own body or in the world, that was one of the most obvious effects for me. Number two was the inability to be able to relax. So I'm not just talking about a kind of active, distracting mind, which we can have if we're not highly practiced in meditation. That can be quite normal, and actually levels of anxiety and stress in our current world are quite normal, very common. But I'm talking about really unable to sit still without feeling like it was totally unsafe. So I could no longer meditate. I could no longer just be still. I had to be constantly in a state of distraction, of doing something to try to distract myself from the really uncomfortable sensations that were going on in my body. So it was and still can be very hard to actually relax, to actually come out of the fight and flight and freeze response into the rest and digest state, which is when we feel calm and safe. So things have kind of gone in waves for me. There have been periods when I felt more safe and more able to relax, and especially if other people have been able to give me touch, people that I trust. I've found touch to be so healing in this process of learning to feel safe again in my body. and other practices have also been really helpful, but I will talk about practices in the next video. So yes, inability to relax, and there are some psychology terms for this. One is hyperarousal. So my mum was actually a psychotherapist, and I went back to live at home after all this happened, and I remember her saying to me that I was hyper aroused, and my mind jumped to the sexual connotation, and I thought, I'm totally not at all aroused. What are you talking about? But then I realized that she meant my nervous system was in a state of hyper arousal, and that was true. It was just like being wound up, just like so much energy, so many frantic thoughts, just feeling very ungrounded. And what also came with that was another psychology term, hypervigilance, which was like this need to control everything, and being so aware, nervous system so aroused and hyper aware in my mind, and just needing to control everything, and finding so many simple life things to be a massive trigger, like sound. I got super sensitive to sound, like the sound of people eating, or sounds when I was trying to sleep, waking me up or keeping me awake, and just getting very triggered by my environment not being as calm as I wanted it to be. Yeah, so unable to relax in my body or in my environment, number 2. Number 3, quite intense body pain and tightness in the muscles and the fascia in my body. So I did discuss this in my last video, and I talked about the vagus nerve and how the vagus nerve runs from the brain down the jaw, throat, chest, esophagus, belly, and through all the organs in the guts. So really affecting the immune system, the digestive system, really affects everything, every organ, and our functioning of the body. This vagus nerve is super important, and it seems to be that when you have a traumatic incident, mine were accidents, but I think it can happen in many different scenarios, that the vagus nerve, it gets kind of stuck in the fight and flight and freeze mode, and that creates too much hormone production of adrenaline and cortisol, which is not good for us in the long run, and creates a lot of muscle tightness and tension through the connective tissues, the fascia. So I did discuss this in my previous video, but I've still many months on from those original traumas, triggered again by having COVID. I'm still experiencing severe muscle tightness through my chest and through my abdomen, and some of these symptoms I'm still experiencing. My experience is that when things get really tight, it does take a while to unwind and to calm down again, and this tightness can be super debilitating, to the point where at times I couldn't turn my neck, I couldn't brush my teeth with my right arm because everything was so tight, and my body was just sending signals that it wasn't safe to move this side of my body at all. So I couldn't do simple things like brush my teeth, lift my arm above my head, wash my hair. Yeah, it really impaired my ability to do things day to day, and just meant I was in a near constant state of pain and discomfort. And yeah, I'm still coming out of that now. I'm still finding more creative ways to unwind my nervous system and let the muscles and the fascia release from their very tight grip. So number 3 is pain and tightness in the body. Number 4, I've put other frightening bodily sensations. Sometimes I felt like I couldn't breathe. The muscles, and like I said, the tension through the vagus nerve, the muscles, especially through here, through the esophagus and the diaphragm and lungs, got so tight at times, and just felt like it all wasn't working properly. The connections weren't working properly, the circulation wasn't working properly, and the breath wouldn't flow properly sometimes. So I felt like I was breathing very shallowly, and sometimes just really felt like I wasn't breathing properly, and that then led to panic, which comes next on my list. So breathing difficulties, also dizziness, and losing kind of sense of grounding. So I don't know if you've ever had a sort of mini blackout, or even sometimes it felt like a mini seizure, where I really felt like something had gone wrong, and like this happens quite a lot actually. If I try and do deep breath work, there's still so much healing through my respiratory system, and it feels super uncomfortable to breathe into certain parts, to breathe deeply into this upper part of my body, which got really, really tight, and I was breathing very shallowly out of fear and contraction for so long, that to try and now breathe deeply into these areas, I sometimes really feel like I'm going to lose consciousness. So I have to take it easy and be grounded when I do these things, but also sometimes they happen involuntarily. And I have had some really scary experiences over the last few years of just not knowing what's wrong with me, what's going on with my body, but trusting that now trusting that this is just part of the process of healing, of coming back from trauma. And like, no doctor would ever tell you this, I don't think, that I know of. But another thing that I experienced towards the beginning of coming out of the freeze state was something called tetany. Tetany is when the muscles just contract through your hands. It usually happens in your hands first, but it's all down this line of the jaw, down the neck, chest, arms, into your hands. So you start to feel this tingling, like tingling, buzzy sensation in your arms and your hands, and then my fingers and thumbs would close together and I wouldn't be able to open them. They would like fuse together, and it would be like an intense electrical pulse and pain up my arm, through my chest, into my jaw, and then it would start to close my mouth until the jaw had contracted to the point where I couldn't move my jaw, and then I really felt like I couldn't breathe. So it sounds pretty terrifying, and it is, although you might have experienced that if you've done breath work, because it is a response of trauma. And I've been told by breathwork practitioners that it's to do with the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body. I also just think what releases it for me is making a lot of noise, shouting. It's usually like repressed emotion, repressed fear, rage, anger, fear. Like when I would shout, it would ease up. So it's almost just like the body getting stuck in this like position of fear. Like I really kind of was like this for a long time, and didn't want to move this part of my body at all. And so that was another really scary thing that happened to me, was the tetany. So the breathing difficulties, the dizziness, the sort of almost seizure type feelings of like blacking out and feeling really dizzy and losing consciousness for moments, frozen in my body, and the tetany. So scary body sensations was number 4. Number 5, I've just touched on this briefly, but panic. I did experience a few months of quite repetitive panic attacks after my second accident, 2019, until I started to learn some techniques to manage my anxiety and ground my energy. Because what happened was all my energy was up here above the heart, and I had no sense of my power center, which is here, between our legs. This is our power, and our hips, our pelvis. And so I could barely feel my feet sometimes, And yes, this connection here was really, really tight and not flowing properly. So all my energy was up here in my mind. Yeah, shallow breathing, and I had so many panic attacks. It was really, really scary. Panic attacks feel like you're dying. I wanted to call an ambulance quite a few times. And then I did start to learn some techniques to ground my energy, like I said, but the anxiety was still quite high level for quite a long time. So yeah, another symptom of PTSD, of a overactive vagus nerve, is anxiety and panic. And so when we don't release the trauma, the energy from the trauma, it's just still coursing through our body. That's the most simple way I can explain it, and I've felt it. It's like it's still in there. It's still there. The fear is still there, and it's being manifested as panic. Yeah, not the nicest part of this experience. So number 6, I've put social anxiety, and feeling really uncomfortable often around other people, because obviously there's all this discomfort and fear and really difficult sensation and going on inside your mind and your body. Then it's quite challenging naturally to be around people, especially people who you feel you can't share what you're going through with, which for me was really difficult, because even with my closest friends and family, I didn't really want to just talk about my trauma all the time and be a nuisance and be a burden and all those things. And I felt often that people didn't know how to respond or how to help, how to hold space for it. So I'd end up not sharing how I really felt and kind of trying to pretend, and that just felt worse, because really, when you're going through all of this, what your body is really calling for is for it to be felt and addressed and shone light upon. So I found it really hard to be around people, and as I mentioned before, also lots of little triggers around sound, around personal space, around being touched. So many things could just trigger me and set me off back into that fight, flight, freeze mode and re-traumatize me. So for a long time I found it difficult to be around people. And you know what, even now, I have to be in a good place, and I have to be in a good place, centered, grounded, and feel like I want to be sociable. Otherwise I'm spending a lot more time on my own, which is perhaps not a bad thing. Perhaps that was something I always needed, but I used to hide myself in social situations, and not really understand that I needed alone time. But for better or for worse, I find it harder to be around people these days, especially as I've stopped drinking so much, very occasionally, stopped smoking. I've stopped having those other crutches to hide behind as well. So yeah, I've noticed my social anxiety is just like risen. Unless I'm around people that get it and that get this healing journey, and that I feel I can be totally authentic with, and that they can hold space for my weirdness. So that's number 6. Number 7, disconnection from pleasure, sexual energy, and the ability to have fun and play. So if we think about it in terms of energy centers, the chakras, when your root chakra is severely challenged from the root chakra is the earth, is the ground, and when we have a serious trauma, that's all about trust, our connection to the earth, our trust in life and being safe. And when that's been severed or damaged, then the next chakra up, which is around pleasure and fun and play and self-expression and creativity, that can't function properly, because we need the roots, the foundation, to be there in order to feel the pleasure and feel safe to feel the pleasure and the play and everything. So yes, that's something that I am working on healing or bringing back into my life, because I've definitely felt super disconnected from my sexual energy and creativity because I've been in survival mode to heal the roots first. And yeah, only in the more recent months have I started to get back in touch with my creativity, and that's just a nice long journey that's ahead of me, because there's so much more to explore there. And number 8, digestive issues. So this is a big one. I did some research on the vagus nerve and found that one of the symptoms of your vagus nerve being a bit out of whack is digestive issues. And I've had digestive issues on and off my whole life, and to be honest, I've definitely had some of these symptoms, or most of these symptoms that I'm talking about, to a slightly lesser degree all of my life, because these recent traumas were really big and amplified everything. But before that, there were many other traumas and challenges to my nervous system. So digestion can only function properly when we're in that rest and digest mode of the parasympathetic nervous system. If we are in fight and flight and freeze mode, we can't digest our food properly, so we get all sorts of issues. Again, it's all connected to the vagus nerve, which runs through all the organs. So you can see that I'm quite bloated, and I'm not massively overeating. I've just had a real issue with bloating, especially this year since I had COVID, and that really tripped my vagus nerve again. I have gone months and months and months with trying to eliminate foods, cutting down on foods, investigating into perhaps like allergies, deficiencies, and really I haven't done all the investigating that I possibly could, but the most logical thing that's come to me is that it's a vagus nerve inflammation, and that's causing bloating. And yeah, it's frustrating, because I'm doing so much Pilates and looking after myself and exercise and eating mindfully, but I don't really enjoy feeling so bloated. But I trust that, yeah, as I keep healing my vagus nerve, that the digestion will get back on track as well. It is getting better. So there's one symptom. Other people might experience IBS. All sorts of digestive issues can be linked to trauma. Because like I said, when we're in fight and flight and freeze mode, we cannot, our digestive system shuts down, doesn't work properly. And I'm sure there's many more complexities to that, but basically trauma affects your digestive system in a negative way. And number 9 is sleep. So again, I guess it's quite obvious, but if you've got really overactive, too much cortisol, too much adrenaline in your body, you're constantly in a state of hyperarousal, high alert, feeling in fear, then of course it's going to be difficult to switch off and go to sleep. And yeah, sleep's so important to our healing as well. So I did self-medicate at times in my journey, which I'm totally at peace with. I think it saved me with sleeping pills. It's not something that I personally would want to do long term, but for example, when I had COVID, for the first month, my nervous system was like on high alert. There were times when many times, or days, when I thought I might die and I was going to have to call an ambulance, and I didn't know, all my tools and techniques, my non-medical, non-pharmaceutical tools and techniques were I was implementing. But when it came to needing to get a good night's sleep, I took a sleeping pill, because otherwise I wouldn't have slept and it would have been a lot worse. I came off the sleeping pills after a month, and that was enough time for my body to start to re-regulate. So I generally don't have too much trouble with my sleep now. I actually sleep a lot. If anything, I have more trouble with getting up in the morning and being an early bird, because once I'm asleep and I'm in a really deep sleep, I just know how healing that is for my body. So I want to let her recover from all she's been through, but I am trying to get back more into the natural rhythms of things now that I'm here and living in nature and feeling like I'm a bit further along my healing journey. So, but I would say if you have experienced a recent trauma, just allow yourself to sleep. It's where we do our healing. It's really, really important. So even if you're napping in the day, I just wouldn't deny yourself sleep. So number 10, I've put fatigue. When we're in this fight flight mode, we're using so much energy. We're kind of fired up on this adrenaline, and when you come down off that, your body just is really depleted and drained. So yeah, fatigue is just a normal effect of trauma as well. I found with COVID that I couldn't get till mid-afternoon without feeling like that was it. I was kind of done for the day. I was kind of waiting for the sun to go down and time for a bath and bed, because I didn't have anything left in me. And yeah, same when I was recovering from surgeries. My body was just really drained, needed a lot more sleep, and needed good nourishment. So yeah. Number 11, depression. You can imagine, just with all of this going on, that it's quite difficult to keep a positive mindset. And positive mindset is essential to be able to get out of the situation, but it's completely natural as well to feel deflated, even depressed. And I don't think I can really do justice to what's going on in our brains and the chemical imbalances that are going on when our nervous systems are this out of balance. But it's like an imbalance of the dopamine and the serotonin, and that is chemically going to cause like lows in our mood, even depression. So I was kind of like flitting between anxiety and depression for a long time in my healing process. And yeah, that was part of the process. I had to go into my darkness. It is part of the journey for me. It was for me anyway. I think for many people, when these things happen, it's an invitation to go into the darkness. Don't get stuck there forever, but also not to be afraid if you're there, because it's okay. It's okay to be there sometimes, you know. And the last one, number 12, is speech. So I found it difficult to articulate what I was feeling, and just to articulate anything sometimes when I was in a really traumatized state. If you read the book The Body Keeps the Score, I'm listening to it for the second time on Audible at the moment. This is one of the things he talks about, the author. He talks about that there's the part of the brain responsible for speech gets almost switched off when we have a really traumatic event happen. So it's the same part of the brain that's related to that gets damaged when people have strokes. So actually it's physiologically proven through brain scans that people have done, that we cannot communicate verbally properly when we've experienced a lot of trauma, or we've been re-traumatized. We're back in that traumatized state. So yeah, I often found myself feeling really mute, and yeah, it's something to watch out for. If you're feeling really uncomfortable in your body and you're unable to express something and how you're feeling to other people, you might be in a traumatized state. You might be reliving a trauma without realizing. Yeah. So those are my 12 points. I will run through them again, just really briefly. So number 1 was fear, not feeling safe in my body and in the world. Number 2, inability to relax, hypervigilance and hyperarousal. Number 3 was intense body pain and tightness. Number 4, really frightening and out of control bodily sensations like the tetany and the difficulty breathing. Number 5, intense anxiety and panic attacks. Number 6, social anxiety and feeling very triggered around other people and the outside world. Number 7, not being able to access pleasure, sexual energy and play and enjoy. Number 8, digestive issues. Number 9, sleep issues. 10, fatigue. 11, depression. And 12, affecting my ability to communicate and speak. So there you go. So yeah, I'm hoping that that helps you. If you've got this far and you're interested and you're still listening, I'm hoping that that helped you in some way. Maybe you can resonate and have experienced some or all of that, and I'd really love to hear from you. Do leave your comments below this video and share whatever you feel to share about your own journey. Perhaps there's some things that I've missed off this list, some other ways in which trauma has affected your life. Perhaps you just like to share some of your journey. Yeah, I share this because I feel like this conversation should be opened up, and we should normalize post-traumatic stress and just trauma in general, because we're all affected in some ways, whether it was from our very early childhood to more recently, or you know, we're all on a spectrum of having experienced some trauma in our lives. And yeah, I think being able to talk about it is just so healing. And in my next video, I'm going to be sharing some of the tools and techniques that helped me in the early days and as I've progressed through my healing journey, and offering deeper access as well through some online courses that I'm creating to help you on your trauma healing journey to empowerment. And yeah, I'm on the journey with you, and I am in faith and trust that our bodies are amazing and they can heal. And when we align our mindset with our faith in our hearts and our power and our connection to our body, when we align all of that, we can heal. Miraculous things can happen, and we can rewrite our stories. And yeah, I'm doing it, and I want to support other people to do it too. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope this helped you, and I'm sending you loads and loads of love. Mwah.